This is Here's How, Ireland's political, social and current affairs podcast, presented by William Campbell.
Thank you for downloading episode 69 of Here's How. In case you haven't noticed, there's a battle going on within feminism right now, with different factions disagreeing even about who counts as a woman. In this podcast, I talk to one veteran feminist about this.
Here's How is Ireland's political, social and current affairs podcast. Make your view heard. Just dial 076 603 5060 and tell the world what you're thinking. Your voicemail may be included in the next podcast. You can find tips on recording your contribution and other ways to contact the show at here'show.ie/call.
On the line now from her home, I have Linda Bellos. Linda describes herself as a black, African, Nigerian, Jewish Labour Party activist since the 1960s, I think a feminist activist. Tell me about your career, essentially your credentials as a feminist fighting for women's equality.
What I would say is for the first nearly 30 years of my life, I was not a feminist. Mm-hmm. I sort of acted as a feminist. I mean, I had a football team. My brother and his mates were in my team. I played cricket. I did all kinds of things that girls weren't supposed to do. Mm-hmm. I didn't think of myself as a feminist. I thought myself as a human being who was capable of doing things, and I wasn't going to let gender, which a word I wouldn't have known at the time. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't have let those things distract me doing what I wanted to do and was capable of doing.
What was it that politicised you?
Well, I went to university as a mature student when I was, I think, 28, and I came across, indeed, my male tutors made me read feminist texts, mm-hmm. and I was reading them, and it would be fair to say that the scales fell from my eyes. I had been a Marxist for many, many years, since my even before my teens, but I'd understood class power. I had a class analysis, but what I didn't have was any kind of gender analysis. And I think that going to university and sitting the course I did, politics and sociology, I did see for the first time the structure of race and class. Mm-hmm. Very much together. I mean, I'd experienced racism and fought against it, but I'm not sure I had any kind of analysis of the dynamics of race or the history of race, and likewise women's oppression.
You say the scales fell from your eyes. How did your opinions change?
Oh, I think it didn't take me more than about 3 months to become a lesbian. I didn't. Very hard to describe what happened, but I did realise that I had fallen in love with a woman. And then that was where I had a sort of crisis, because I had never thought of such a thing before. Why hadn't I? So I started unpicking the kind of history of how I'd been socialised as a girl in this society. But my feelings were real. I mean, mm-hmm. they weren't, they were fairly profound. And I became a lesbian.
Tell me, obviously you said that you had been a Marxist, as you put it, for a long time. How, when you added essentially being a lesbian and becoming, as you put it, a feminist into that, how did your views change? My Marxism
remained in the sense that I was a keen fan of Marx's Paris manuscripts, the 1844. It's a long essay, and it was one of those cases of the scales fell from my eyes. It wasn't published until 1957, so most of the people who called themselves communists wouldn't have read it. The Soviet Stalin and et al. Banned it. Mm-hmm. I still think this is a profound piece of work. So I remained a Marxist, mm-hmm. not a communist, and I added an analysis. I used my Marxist critique to consider gender and sexuality, mm-hmm. and realised that there was a system of power and that it could be undone. Doesn't mean everyone was going to become, all women were becoming lesbians or any nonsense like that, but that there was power keeping a system in place for some men's benefit. Not all men benefited. I mean, I think most men benefit somewhat, but some men benefit big time by the oppression of women.
Mm-hmm.
And sexuality and sex, the role of, for example, rape, to terrorize women, it became to me more visible. I realized when I sort of unpicked how I had, as a child, as a girl child, been sort of not just indoctrinated, but sort of inculcated with the fear and the threat of rape, which all of us experience. One of the things that homophobes seek to do is threaten me and other women with rape. It's a tool, and I began to see it. So using my Marxist critique, seeing the tools of power, I applied that to gender and to race, particularly to gender, and I could see similar parallels. And so I had and remain having a politics which is more inclusive than some people's.
Okay, I want to ask you about a particular incident. You were invited and then uninvited to speak at Cambridge University. Cambridge, obviously one of the oldest and most famous and most prestigious universities in the world, in the UK. Do you want to give me the background to how A, you were invited, and B, you were uninvited?
Yes, well, I got an invitation, I think, when would it be, about September, asking me to come and speak. And in the meantime, I had become familiar with the I can't exactly call it a debate, the mess that had been created around those of us who are concerned about gender reassignment. Mm-hmm. And I indicated that I would include my comments on that nature, because I didn't really want to hijack them. I mean, what was clear was that some students were being rather delicate about discourse, and I didn't want to shock them, and I wasn't going to say anything shocking. But you can see the reaction across the campuses of the UK that one may not speak about a critique of gender because it will hurt the poor dears. And I'm sorry if I'm sounding rude, but I'm just remembering, as a mature student going to university, I remember being challenged. That's what one gets to university for. Mm-hmm. But there you go.
I should say it was the Beard Society in Cambridge that's a student society that invited you. And
absolutely, and I needed to make it clear in advance, given their name, that I didn't want to come and hijack them.
For those of us, maybe for the listeners of a more naive disposition, what does the word beard mean to lesbians?
Well, to older lesbians, because lots of I have to explain to young women some of the history. A beard would be somebody who it covers for a gay man. So usually a lesbian who will go to a social event with a gay man as though he were wearing a beard. It's like she plays the role of a heterosexual partner.
A fake girlfriend.
That's a beard. Yes. It doesn't mean that these young women know that.
Yes, they could be invited, perhaps thinking that they're going on a real date.
No. What I mean is, I'm not sure that the students at Cambridge University understood the history of the word beard.
Ah, I see.
And it might very well be that some of them were growing beards because they're taking hormones. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I make no judgment. I'm merely describing what they were called and what I know by the word within what they describe as the LGBTI community, but they don't include lesbians in that. And if I sound a bit cross, it's because I am.
Okay, I want to get into that a little bit, and I don't want the whole thing to be dominated by that. But there is unquestionably a very deep and sometimes very bitter divide between what are called second generation and third generation feminists, and there are other ways of describing that, and I don't want to get bogged down in the vocabulary. But am I right in saying that the core difference is whether or not trans women, that's to say someone who's born male and either socially or medically transitioned to being female, whether they should be accepted in feminist groups and be accepted fully as women?
Well, I won't join such a group. I'm not stopping anybody else to doing that. But some of them are doing more than that. They're stopping people like me, and there are a lot of us as feminists, as women. We're being barred and indeed even thrown out of the Labour Party. Uh-huh. But for holding a view that...
Which view exactly? Let's hear the view.
The view that gender is a man-made construct. Like racism, mm-hmm. These are made up. And, I mean, if you were to look at factually the number of people who have transitioned or come out as transgender, mm-hmm. it is only significantly over the last 10 years. What happened 50 years ago? What happened to the feelings? They didn't exist. This is new, and it may be new because it's very much anti-feminist. I mean, a feminist critique would look at the power between men and women.
I'm going to pause you. I'm going to pause you there. I'm going to pause you there for a second, Linda, because I know that some people listening won't be fully au fait with this discourse, and I want to get the groundworks first. Feminists, second wave feminists, who would include you and maybe very famous writers going back to the 70s and 80s like Germaine Greer and so forth, said that there was something that essentially many of the things that were viewed as feminine were just made up by society, and that if women wanted to be train drivers or engineers, then they could do that. And mm-hmm. that appears to have run into conflict with a view that somebody's gender is essentially in their head, and that usually but not always matches the sex organs that are in their pants, and that there are some people who are born what most people would view as male, that's to say with male sex organs in their pants, who are in fact their gender is female, and that's something different about them that is real and essential. And the second wave feminists, people like yourself, were saying, hang on a second, no, that's just something that's made up by society anyway. And
William, what on earth are the characteristics of female? What are they?
Oh, you'd be way better able to answer that than me.
Well, I don't know. That you just asserted that they say that the pro-trans people are talking about femaleness. What are its characteristics? And why don't I have them? I mean, I have given birth to 2 children and had the awfulness of periods for nearly bloody 50 years, etc. But I cook quite well. I also fix cars and put up shelves and do all kinds of things that a human being might need to do. And I don't know what femaleness is.
Let me suggest it, and I'm not suggesting for a moment that I accept all of one side or the other of that debate, but just to put the point to you, it is notable in countries that have unquestionably a very high degree of oppression of women, particularly Islamic countries. You might take Pakistan, Bangladesh, or Iran as examples. The degree to which young women, students, want to go to university and study things like engineering is really remarkable. I think in Iran, something like 70% of all engineering students are female.
Yes. And your point is what?
Let me get to it. In the West, that proportion is much, much lower. And it would appear that in countries where young women are oppressed, and in most cases it's either their fathers or their brothers, are suffering in the home, are suffering quite a lot of oppression. They will do anything to get out of the home, including, for example, going to university and studying engineering. But in countries in the West, and you can put Norway and Sweden at the top of the pinnacle of female liberation, it does appear that there's a pattern that when there aren't any external pressures, that women do seem to congregate for example, when they go to university, to prefer subjects that are caring subjects, or that are proxies for caring subjects. So, for example, let's
get rid of all of those women who have made such scientific discoveries that we are alive today.
Oh, absolutely not. And I don't minimize that for a minute. I don't minimize that for a minute. And of course there are many honourable exceptions, but it is notable that it's difficult to say that there's a lot of gender discrimination in universities where more than half the students are female.
And how many? Look at how many of the pay of professors and teachers. I mean, get real.
No, Linda, hold on for the point. Hold for the point. In universities, there is huge gender disparities between departments. So maths, physics, engineering are hugely male. Biology, law, medicine are very substantially female. What's happening there?
What's happening is, what I've seen is a growing number of women getting into what are clearly male-dominated and the kind of questions that are being asked of students coming in, I mean, I'm hearing them, are entirely, what is the word, irrelevant, but sexist by the men who run the department. A woman,
but Linda, slow down, Linda, for 1 minute. 100 years ago, all of those departments were 100% male. How is it that there's more sexism in physics, maths and engineering than there is in law, medicine and biology?
I have no idea. You'll have to explain to me how men's brains work.
No, but isn't it possible that girls are choosing those subjects? And it's notable that
they might indeed, and it isn't compulsory.
Sure,
I'm not going to say of my granddaughters that they've got to become scientists or car mechanics, etc. I am not suggesting, though. Personally, I think being able to fix a car and understand science is pretty important. And I learnt rubbish, it wasn't good quality stuff at my secondary school, but I did learn those things. But then I went to an all-girls school. No wonder I learnt it. What is happening in classes, of mixed classes, is that sometimes the boys are dominating and making it very difficult for many of the girls. And occasionally one or two will get through.
Yeah, that's true. And even in those classes, engineering, physics, maths and so forth, there are still some females. It's not like there are none.
There are none, that's right. But look what is happening, William, culturally, certainly in Britain, and I think in Ireland as well. And my partner, by the way, was from Dublin. Her family is still there. But the propaganda has been about feminising women. Lots of things. I'm talking about current things, not just historic things, but current things. I've seen lots of things go backwards for women. But there were lots of significant changes in the 1960s and 70s and early 80s, and lots of things I'm seeing now. I'm observing the way that little girls are being treated, and lots of the culture of dolls. Some of the toys. Right, go to pick the toys for my grandchildren. I mean, they're in their teens now. But over the last decade, it has been harder to find neutral toys that are simply good. They're much more sexist, much more, orientated and promoted to a kind of femininity and a masculinity. I think this is wrong. I think that children, our boys and girls, should have a range of opportunities unimpacted by gender, and some of the boys, probably maybe most of the boys, will do things that we will call masculine, and some of the girls will do lots of things that are called feminine. It's the value that we put on them, not simply the nature of them. When a person is being restricted, which is what happened for lots of men becoming nurses in Britain. There were, and indeed there still are, these are cultural, and they ought to go.
Let me ask about that. Let me ask about that, Linda. I believe in equality of opportunity, and I think that anybody who wants to pursue any path they want should be given the opportunity to do that. And if they are suitable for that, if they pass the test that everybody else has to pass, or if they have the skill that anybody else has to have, then they should be allowed to do that. And to hell with whether it's perceived to be male or female, or whether the person is a boy or a girl or a man or a woman. But at the end of the day, if it turns out that girls and women seem, without prompting, to prefer some paths and men prefer the others, isn't that just okay?
Of course it is. But what you asked me before seemed to deduce some value out of that. Something.
Absolutely not. No.
Well, you certainly implied that you could deduce from this array of choices that women were categorically in one strand and males in another. We're actually talking about culture, aren't we?
Linda, there's no question that there's a cultural input, but it's possible there's a biological input as well. It could be part of it.
There might be. What the heck is the point of that?
None, actually.
Okay, the only point you could take is because there's a biological fact, therefore all women shall be barred, and it has happened.
No, well, yes, that has happened. You're right, Linda. That has happened in the past.
Yes. So we can hold it lightly, couldn't we?
That's true.
Some people have a preference for cooking, and some people don't have a preference for cooking, and you don't have to have a penis in order to determine those things.
I agree with you 100%. I agree with you 100% on that. But what I am getting at is that on some occasions, even when we take out all society pressure, all cultural pressure, it's entirely possible that when you take all of that away, there still will be some gendered preferences.
There might be, but we ain't there yet, mate. Don't hold your breath.
That's true.
That's
true. That's a fair point. And of course, it will never be possible to take them all away, so we will never know for sure. But there's good reason to believe.
Let's not waste our time. Let's not waste our breath. Let's not waste our creative thoughts on looking back on how things might be, which will justify the restriction of other human beings.
I completely agree. I completely agree. There should be no restriction. But can I make a point to you, Linda? A distinction has been drawn between equality of opportunity and equality of outcome. And if there is equality of opportunity, or if to the extent that there is not equality of opportunity, that it's being tackled and we're working to get rid of it. But even with an apparent equality of opportunity, we get a different outcome at the end. Should we be rigging the system to force the outcome to be 50-50?
No, we shouldn't. Under no circumstances. And consequently, some of the useless men who seem to pass should be thrown out because they don't reach the... Yes, so I'm not in favour of skewing it one gender or another, one group or another. Either a person is competent or they're not. But don't make any of them incompetent by undermining their drive, all of the things that actually do happen to real people, including disabled men. And, run through a list of the people who don't fit quite to the selective category, get run, criticised, and they have to struggle more, etc. I want an equal opportunity for every human being to be the best they can be, and it won't, thankfully, all be the same.
That sounds very inspiring. And one thing, and you've given yourself away as a grandmother, so I hope you won't say that you probably remember up to the 1970s in the UK, the 11 plus exam.
Oh, I did. I failed it.
Congratulations. Yes. But for the people who don't know this 11 plus exam was essentially designed to sort out whether a kid finishing their primary school should be sent to a more academic school where they would perhaps be prepared for university, or sent to a less academic school where they might be prepared for a trade or whatever.
Job.
Yes, exactly. Yes. I was trying to be polite. And up to the 1970s, there was set a different pass grade for girls and for boys. The girls had to get a higher grade to pass because in order to force a 50-50 outcome. Because at that age, at about 11...
it wasn't even 50-50. There were more boys' grammar schools than there were girls' grammar schools.
Okay.
But it wasn't 50-50.
I hope you remember it better than me. But my point is that that it was entirely possible that a boy and a girl getting the same grade, the boy would pass and the girl would fail. And I think anybody today can recognize, apart from all the other problems with the 11 plus, which I'll put aside, that's a grossly unfair system. But it is the case that young girls and young boys have different developmental curves, and that's why at that age, that type of academic exam, girls had a higher likelihood of passing or a higher likelihood of getting a good grade than a boy. Isn't it likely that, for example, and we talk about the wage of people, for example, of stars in the BBC or of people in FTSE 500, that's to say, large corporations in the UK. Isn't it likely that there's something, and it's not necessarily positive, but that there's some characteristic of these very high performing, very hard competitive men that is why they're getting there rather than and comparatively fewer women?
I want to laugh. Not in the world I live in. I mean, don't put me against any of them because I'll lick them. Despite the fact that I failed my 11 plus, etc. I mean, I just don't. They rig the rules for them and theirs, don't they? Tell me that I'm wrong.
No, I'm not suggesting that's true, but
I'm not suggesting that's untrue. It's not a measure of their competence, it's a measure of their incompetence, of their lack of courage. For the words that they spout about, honour and justice, etc. I'm not suggesting all of them, but those people who play around with their school and their class allegiances, they do this country no favours.
But you don't, we can perhaps look outside the UK. You don't look at, for example, Mark Zuckerberg and say that he made a multi-billion-dollar company because he was,
No, he
using...
had competence.
Say again?
He had competence.
Yeah, and there are many people who have done that, but of those new very large, but slow down, Linda, of those new very large companies, the number of female founders who have made these multi-billion-dollar companies is relatively small, isn't it? Yes, and so is the number of men. I mean,
that's
the
women are smaller. The women are smaller than the men.
Yes.
But what's the point of it, what you're saying? I mean, I'm going to, if accepting that argument, I'm then going to condemn all those men who didn't make it.
No, not at all. And I'm not saying that there's any particular value. I guess the stock market puts a hell of a value on it, but I don't necessarily, I'm absolutely not saying that there is any, intrinsic human value in that, or that people who don't do that are in any way less worthwhile as human beings. But my point is that there does seem to be a difference in the interests or in the tactics or whatever that is gender based.
Oh, come off it. Look, some women don't want to do it. They have the competence. They choose not to do it.
I agree with that 100%.
It's like pissing up the bloody wall.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you that I'm not suggesting that women don't have the capability. I'm suggesting that...
We don't want to do it.
Yes, exactly.
I remember the first day I went...
And by the way, most men don't want to do it either.
I agree with you. I entirely agree with you. Many of them suffer as a consequence of not
people
being
who
able
have,
to compete.
Can I give you one line that I read, which I really thought was startling, was that Bill Gates, the founder of Microsoft, had what was called a 7-hour turnaround. And what that meant was, from the time he went home in the night, not in the evening, when the time he went home in the night, to the time when he arrived back at work in the morning was 7 hours. He was 7 hours not on the job every day. And of course, most men will not put up with that. And almost all women will not put up with that.
Yes,
but of the tiny proportion of humanity that will put up with it, most of them are men. That doesn't say anything bad about any men or any women, but it does speak to something of a gender difference, doesn't it?
Well, I'll tell you what I used to have to do when I was leader of Lambeth Council, which was that we managed to pass a rule saying that meetings would end by 10. Whatever else happened, there would have to be a vote, but it wasn't
10 p.m. You're saying here.
Yes, 10 p.m. And I would be at my desk at 8 o'clock in the morning. Every morning.
Let me switch topics here. For people who
I don't have a penis. You understand this?
I do.
I do not have testicles.
We've made that clear already.
Yes, and I could do it. I had the drive to do it. I had the opportunity to do it, and I had the need to do it. And if I needed to, as many women do, there are women who are up cooking, cleaning, washing, doing a full day's work, and that is equal to anything that a man does in his, 10 hours or 14 hours of work, getting paid for it. I'm getting angry. Can you hear? I'm getting angry.
Let's call it passion, Linda.
Yes, passion indeed. I'm not really angry, but I am distressed by the invisibility of women's work and contribution, because the Mark Zuckerbergs can't go to work or be at work for hours and hours and hours without coming back to somebody, maybe a clean sheet, maybe some food, maybe somebody's washed his clothes. He's going to have to make arrangements for those things because somebody's got to do it. Let
me switch a little bit here. Are you a TERF?
I loathe that expression.
For people who don't know what it is, explain what it is.
I'm not going to. It's as far as I'm concerned, a term of abuse, a description of somebody who is not a transgender person, a woman.
Yes. Let me fill in the listeners, Linda. And I agree, it's a term of abuse in many cases. TERF stands for Trans Exclusionary Radical Feminist, and it is a term that has been applied to you. I know
it has, and I'll take it as the word nigger is applied to me as well.
I can hear you feel strongly about that.
Well, why shouldn't I? I've had 67 years in this bloody world. I have seen a lot. I have experienced a lot. I have felt a lot. I have.
The reason I ask, Linda, is because I've been looking at some of the shall we say, discussion online between people like yourself, second wave feminists, and people who might be described as third wave feminists, and some of the vitriol would make your hair stand on end.
Yes, indeed.
Isn't that terribly upsetting?
No, it's just it's disappointing. It's not upsetting. I mean, goodness me, I've dealt with worse personally. I had Margaret Thatcher and Norman Tebbit personally attack me. I mean, verbally, of course. I don't mean physically.
That's a badge of honour either way.
No, it is. It's disappointing, but it put it this way. It enhances my resolve.
First of all, I'd have to say that I do not believe, looking at what I can see online, I don't believe that this is a symmetrical thing. And there are literally whole websites dedicated to just documenting an unbelievable amount of online abuse against feminists, against people like yourself. There is, and as I say, it does not seem to be symmetrical to me, but there do seem to be some feminists who are at least enjoying baiting or being rude to trans women.
Yeah, there are. I observe it too. I'm disappointed. It's not within my power to stop them. I hope that they will see that it isn't helpful.
You're talking about feminists who are your allies. You want them not to be abusive.
Yes. I don't think that we should be abusive. I'm abusive of the ideas, but not the individuals, not the people.
Okay.
I'm disagreeing with the ideas. The people, I think, are wrong, and I don't think they would be persuaded of that they're wrong by simply being angry and rude with them.
Okay. Germaine Greer, who would be, I'm sure, somebody who you know very well.
No, I don't know her. I know
you know of her, I'm sure.
Yes.
I think she shares essentially your position on trans women. But that simply out of politeness, if somebody asked to be addressed with female pronouns, that she would do so. Would you share that position?
She would do so. Yeah, I think I would too. I mean, this gender stuff is very distressing for both sides. I don't like being angry with people. I'm more likely to be angry with ideas. Mm-hmm. I have been hurt personally as a young person who claims to be a woman, 19 years old, has taken a post that women have fought for to have, mm-hmm. and has taken that post, and who has accused me of threatening violence, but what they've actually done or got hold of is a cutting. When I say cutting, I actually mean somebody has, what do you do when you edit? That's right. They've mm-hmm. edited words of my speech and cut it so that it appears to be me threatening violence towards a trans person or to trans people. But what's interesting, because two versions I've seen, two copies of this I've seen over the months, that they've had to put the word trans in what's the word, parenthesis, uh-huh. because I didn't say it.
Yeah.
They thought I said it or something, mm-hmm. but I didn't say it, and they can't put it as part of speech because I didn't say it. I did threaten to defend myself if attacked. Mm-hmm. I did. And I will say so again, whether I'm verbally or physically attacked. And I tell you that as a young black woman, mm-hmm. back in the 1950s, I was taught by my father, as indeed was my younger brother, taught how to box. Because we needed to. We were staying here. We were born here. And
by here you mean Britain?
Yes. England in particular. Mm-hmm. And I don't know when I acquired an approach to life which said that there are three things to do in these situations. You run, you fight, or you talk your way out. And wisdom is knowing the right response.
One point that I thought, and I've been looking at perhaps some stuff online on the other side of that debate. And one point that I thought was relevant is that the type of right news outlets, everything from Fox News to Breitbart and everything in between, has almost made trans people into their mascots of everything that's wrong with the world, and are perhaps adopting second wave feminists as allies against that. How do you feel? How do you feel about people like Fox News being adopting people like you as an ally?
Well, they won't be able to do it. I don't even watch them. I can't do it. One, because I cannot understand how on earth my television and other thing works. Because of my age, or uh-huh. no, actually, because I'm a Luddite. Actually, that's why. I watch BBC television. Occasionally, I might be tempted to watch a commercial channel. Mm-hmm. I completely, and I'm sounding proud of it because I have enough to read with newspapers and radio than watching Fox News or anything to do with that man. So I'm rather biased.
I think we don't even have to specify
yes,
who
exactly,
that man
exactly. No
that
advertising.
Man is. Yes, yes. I try to avoid the T word.
Yes.
Finally, Linda, it's fantastic talking to you. You said you have a granddaughter.
Actually, I've got two granddaughters and one grandson.
How will your granddaughters' lives be different to yours?
My youngest is going through some of the pressures of gender stuff. I was invited by her mother, my daughter, to go and talk to her, which I did, and I think I clarified things for her to explain what's happening on this new trans stuff. And so I hope that she will come out of this with a growing sense of herself as a human being, as an equal human being. Not a gendered person, not having to, she is Jewish, she doesn't, I don't want her to have to, as it were, announce that she's Jewish. She's part African. She doesn't look it. She looks like her other grandmother, with red hair and freckles and blue eyes, blue-green eyes. But she's definitely my granddaughter. And I want her to be a whole person, as indeed I want her brother, my young grandson, to be a whole person. And if that means that they're, whatever, I want them to be, they're supposed to be the best they can be.
Linda Bellos, veteran feminist, thank you very much for talking to me.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Never miss a show. Follow at Here's How Podcast on Twitter and like Here's How on Facebook for updates on each show's contents.
That's almost the end of episode 69 of Here's How, Ireland's political, social and current affairs podcast, published on the 21st of February 2018. I have links and references for everything we were talking about in the show notes on the website. And if you can think of another topic that should be covered in a future show, or if you want to suggest someone to include, and that could be yourself, then let me know. If you like the podcast, please go on iTunes and give it a rating or even write a nice review. Also, please like the show on Facebook and follow the podcast on Twitter at Here's How Podcast. And subscribe to the podcast so new shows automatically come up in your podcast feed. You can use iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, or any other podcast app or software. And you can subscribe by email now as well. There's full information about all of that and contact details for the show. It's all at www.here'show.ie. The next show will be uploaded shortly. The Here's How podcast is produced and presented by me, William Campbell. Thank you for listening.